Hello everyone, welcome to part 3 of this mini series about project risk, and in this video I'm going to talk about risk identification. So risk identification is a process that it's the process of determining which risks may affect the project and documenting their characteristics. And this is a process that it's not as hard as it seems. Try to imagine how things will come by or what things can go wrong and try to come up with everything from our head. It doesn't work that way. There's many tools you can use to help you on this process. So risks can only, but the main, I think before I start with the tools is to explain that risks can only be managed if they are identified, but you have many tools available. I'm only going to cover my favorite ones, and therefore I'm not going to cover all of them. This is by far not an exhaustive list of all the things that could be done. The first one is interviews. Interviews are great, especially but you have to interview people that have experience in the project. You can interview people internally to your organization, people that work in the same company as you, and this can be a great source of information, but you can also interview people that are external to your organization. The only thing here I would say is be careful with confidential information. So there's many questions you can ask. So what worked well, what problems did you face? If you go online, you can find a variety of questions that you can use for such a situation. But here, the main problem I would say is that people tend to avoid telling their mistakes. And therefore, you have to really dig deep and try to get all the details and try to ask the more specific questions you ask, the better it is. And even sometimes ask the same question, but in 2 or 3 different ways to make sure that the information is consistent. Another one that is used is called assumption testing. Now, this one is we create hypotheses and we create scenarios on the assumptions that we want to take. What we try to do is to calculate the validity of our results if we start taking different assumptions, different what ifs. And then I try to analyze the sensitivity of each variable. Okay, so what if this variable, if I increase it by 50%, what would be the impact on the project? What if I decrease it by 50%? How would it impact the project? And here, the objective of this one is try to understand what are the variables that affect the project the most. This can be extremely complex, or it can be done in a more simplistic way where you use more basic tools, but still, for me it's a great tool to use because it really allows you to see the impact of something on your project. And obviously here the objective is always to calculate accuracy, stabilities, consistent completeness, and therefore it can get quite complex. Diagramming is another great way to identify problems. I really like this method. There's 2 major examples we can use. One is called the swimming lane. So it's on the left and it looks like that. It really looks like swimming lanes, right? So what you try to do is on each line is a different department on the project or a different person, for example. And then you explain your project a little bit like a network diagram, but you explain your project through transitions from department to department. So for example, this project starts in marketing, and then information has to go to customer care unit. From customer care comes back to marketing and so on. So here, this is an important one to understand because every arrow you see is a possible risk of communication. And every time that arrow crosses a swimming light, the risk is aggravated. So for example, over here we have an arrow that stays within the same lane. So therefore the risk here is much lower than, for example, this one over here that crosses different lanes. The pre-mortem graph, which is on the right, is a very good diagram as well. It's also called the Ishikawa diagram. And what we do here is more like a brainstorming tool when you are with your team. You have the project, you define different departments, or you define, for example, different phases, and then you start debating what are the risks that we have for each one of those, and you start writing them down. So for example, technology, we start discussing technology and what are the risks can go back in technology, for example, debugging process on this development, and so on. So these both are great to determine. The first one, in my opinion, is very good to determine risks regarding communication, while the pre-mortem is more used for a brainstorming idea of coming up with topics related to, or with the risks related to your project. As you see, there are many tools that we can use to identify risks and discovering where risks might come before even the project starts. This is excellent exercise in order to predict some of the things that might happen and prepare responses for them. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know if you have any questions on the comment section below, and I'll see you on the next video of this mini series.